Imagine finding out that the most private, intimate moment of your life was secretly recorded and leaked online for thousands of strangers to see. In South Korea, there is a word for this that strikes terror in women. Molka. It's the real-life world epidemic of illegal spy cameras being hidden in public areas like bathrooms, change rooms, and hotels, catching women's most intimate moments without them knowing. In this book, Molka, author Monika Kim takes that real-life nightmare and makes it way more personal and way more disturbing. Because what happens when the monster watching you isn't a faceless stranger on the internet? Instead, it is maybe that creepy ID guy that sits next to you in the cubicle, or worse, a boyfriend you actually once trusted. This is the exact trap that Dahye finds herself in, and what makes this book hit like an absolute gut punch is that the horror isn't made up. It is entirely rooted in real life, real world, digital crimes, public humiliation, and a broken system that protects toxic men while punishing the victim. So Kim takes that systemic rot and transforms it into a brilliant, razor-sharp revenge thriller, because in this book, our main character is pushed so far past violation, shame, and betrayal that sorrow completely burns away and leaves behind nothing but pure, unadulterated feminine rage. And honestly, revenge is the only language left to be spoken. Welcome to Twist, the whole insane story told, where I will be breaking down the full story of Molka and why it works so powerfully as both a horror and critique. Now, full spoilers ahead, so this is the warning. If you haven't read it and you want to find out yourself, then please exit out now, go read the book, and please come back to me and then we can chat about it then. Now, to understand why this book is so deeply unsettling, we have to talk about the title. Molka is the Korean term for hidden spy cameras secretly installed to record people without their consent. We are talking about places where you are supposed to feel completely safe and not vulnerable. Places like bathrooms, hotel rooms, changing areas. This isn't just a plot device, it is a massive widespread epidemic in South Korea and also other parts of the world, with thousands of cases being reported every single year. The footage then gets uploaded to dark websites or shared in private chat rooms behind paywalls. Author does note that she loosely based some of the storyline on a famous case in 2019 called the Burning Sun scandal. That case completely blew up when it was exposing, I think, K-pop celebrities like singers like Jong-young, who were secretly filming their intimate moments and passing the footage around in private group chats like they were real trophies. He was eventually convicted and sent to prison. But if you want a proper deeper dive into that insane case, definitely go check out a BBC documentary, which I will link all of these in the comments and descriptions below. Or you can head over to Stephanie So's channel called Rotten Mango, where she does a deep retelling and deep dive into the situation from the very start to even, I think, some of them being now released from jail and continuing sort of their dodgy ways. But check out the description, check out the documentary if you want to see what really happened there. Also, there is this show called Taxi Driver that I watched in season 2. The story obviously comes around at the very end of it, but part of it starts to build up throughout the series, where you see the Burning Sun sort of retold from fictional characters' points of view. And it is a revenge show, so eventually the bad guys in that show do get punished, but in reality that is a very different story. So if you want to see some satisfaction in those people being taken down as they should have been, then please watch that series Taxi Driver. But this whole Molka situation does get worse, because there was a massive case in 2019 involving live streaming operation that was run from hotels, where 2 men hid micro cameras inside objects like wall clocks and hair dryers across dozens of rooms in multiple cities. And then they broadcast these intimate scenes live, where it showed 800 couples in their most vulnerable situations. And it was a subscribed sort of paid site where it was running over overseas servers. They were making money over people's obviously private moments, and that obviously blew up. And this is why I think this novel Molka exists now. This book isn't just a fictional horror, it is a mirror to a terrifying reality. But our author Monika Kim doesn't just write a ripped from the headlines thriller, she weaves something much darker. This is a story about grief, revenge, and ghosts. But honestly, the most disturbing part, it's It's how ordinary everyday misogyny makes these extreme violations feel totally normal to the men committing them and almost like they have a right to do it. The villains in this book aren't monsters, they don't look like them. Some are just awkward, forgettable IT guys, some are polished, wealthy boyfriends, some hide behind their high status and money, and others hide by being just totally invisible to society as a whole. But Kim's ultimate point is that they are all connected by the exact same entitlement, the same hunger to possess, watch, and control women. And this is why this book feels so incredibly relentless. It's not about one bad guy, it is about a whole entire ecosystem that flat out refuses to protect women. So let's get into the story. So the story opens up inside a regular, bustling Seoul office building. And right out of the gate, Kim takes this completely normal, everyday environment and makes it feel totally contaminated. We're looking at a standard office corporate setting, the kind of place where people move around sort of half awake, holding their coffees, checking emails, and just stressing over deadlines. But hiding in plain sight within that normality is Jong-young. He's an IT technician, and he has done something absolutely vile. He's installed micro cameras in the women's bathrooms, not in the men's, just in the women's. He watches them during the workday at his desk. He categorizes what he sees. He turns their most private moments into his own twisted archive of power and pleasure. And what makes Jong-young so upsetting is that Kim refuses to make him some glorious criminal mind. He's just a petty, bitter little man. He's the exact kind of man society trains itself to ignore until the damage is already done. His cruelty grows out of sheer boredom and a stale, unsatisfied life. He feels overlooked by everyone, emasculated and resentful. And he solves that emotional emptiness by stealing access to women's bodies. This horror isn't some random act from outside society. It is nestled inside the routine. It lives inside the vents, the cables, and the office screens. While Jong-young is operating from the shadows, we are introduced to our main character, Dahye. The author doesn't make Dahye a vulnerable person just because of the things that are going to happen to her in the present. Instead, she shows us how vulnerability is built up over time. And as viewers, while we might spot the red flags from a mile away from the men in a room and scream at the book to stay away, you start to completely understand why Dahye has this desperate hollow hunger to be chosen, to be wanted, to have someone finally look at her and say, you are enough. And that emotional hunger is exactly what sets up the trap for the next major player in the nightmare, Hong Jong, I would say. Now, his name is translated to be big, capable leader. I suspect named by his parents to be something important, but he's not. But this man doesn't deserve this title at all. I'm going to call this man Hudson, so I don't butcher the pronunciation of the Korean name, and honestly, because I don't think he deserved the respect of me trying to pronounce it anyway. Hudson enters Dahye's life like a total fantasy initially. He is wealthy, he's incredibly handsome, attentive, and an heir to some serious money. He sweeps Dahye out of her ordinary life and into a glamorous world of luxury. For a moment, it feels like the answer to everything she has been missing, and she now feels like she matters in the world. These two characters are introduced, I believe, as the contrast here, because Jong-young represents the invasive male power from below, the hidden, filthy, humiliating kind. And then you've got Hudson, who represents the male power from above, the polished, the expensive, and then the socially protected. But as a viewer, you start to notice something dark under the surface. Hudson's desire for her, you can tell, is purely physical. The second she starts to fend off his advances because she's not feeling well or because they're in a public area and she doesn't want the humiliation of it, he immediately freezes up, grows distance, and loses interest fast in her. But Dahye clings to it because who wouldn't want to believe that finally they've been selected from the crowds of millions, especially when you're in a vulnerable state. As the viewers, we understand the danger and the red flags long before she does. In this book, class and wealth are just tools for men to escape consequences. From here, Kim lets the dread accumulate at a masterful pace. Nothing explodes right away. Instead, Jong-young's gaze narrows and maybe transforms into a bit of obsession he has now with Dahye. Why? The only reason why he gets obsessed with her is because of something totally normal that happens in the workplace, where Dahye remembers his name on an encounter, and in his twisted mind, that means that she's for him and belongs to him now. Meanwhile, Hudson's charm starts to curdle. His behavior becomes aggressive, predatory, and honestly borderline straight SA in a lot of his encounters with her. Yet Dahye keeps moving forward, trying to protect the love she thinks she has finally found. This is where Molka becomes an incredible, effective piece of psychological horror. Even before the main scandal erupts, you can feel the air getting heavier. You know with absolute certainty that something catastrophic is about to happen just around the corner. And then you hit the first turning point where thing for Dahye shatters in her life. An intimate video of Dahye and Hudson surfaces online as part of a massive spy cam scandal. Suddenly her private moments are grotesquely public. And at this point in the book, we have no idea who filmed it and who leaked it to the public. The story completely starts flirting with violation and drags you right into the deep end of it. Because the true horror isn't just that Dahye's privacy has been destroyed, it's the social aftermath of that destruction. The second that video drops, everyone around her becomes a participant in her downfall. Strangers consume it, society judge it, people turn her trauma into just casual discussion and not a real person behind that trauma at all. Now, what does our Hudson do? The wealthy, powerful fairy tale boyfriend. He does not stand by her. He decides to flee the country because he has the money to do so. He escapes the scrutiny and protects his own reputation. That abandonment is a brutal blow and an emotional pivot in the book. It shows you exactly what his love was worth the second it was tested against public consequences, and it was absolutely worth nothing. Dahye is left to completely absorb all the shame, the exposure, those whispers, and the total catastrophe, and she starts to lose herself in it. Kim is absolutely merciless here, and it feels entirely intentional. You understand that women targeted by this crime, the original act is probably just the beginning of their downfall and their horrors. Dahye is stripped of her dignity, her career, and of course, her home. This is because we find out that her strict, toxic parents care way more about what the neighbors and society thinks of them than protecting their own daughter. Their mother's harsh words, cold actions tell you everything you need to know about their dynamic. Because the true horror of this story dynamic is revealed when we find out that Dahye's older sister, Eun-hee, didn't just accidentally drown, she took her own life. Dahye found her sister's diary and discovered that Eun-hee was pregnant, and a pregnant teenager at that, who had been abandoned by her boyfriend, who claimed that she was the one responsible and it was entirely her fault. Dahye then reveals this secret to her parents. Eun-hee knows that this secret being revealed now to her parents will bring them nothing but shame, and their reputation will be ruined, and she didn't want to deal with the consequences of what would happen to her. And so instead of sort of dealing with it head on or getting any support from her parents or even her sister, she said there is nothing else left for her here on this earth and decides to just escape and jumps into a river. Having been raised in this exact same suffocating house of cards, Dahye hits rock bottom. She quits her job and tries to escape the scrutiny, and by doing that, the author completely unbinds her from traditional society. She has no job, she has no family, and no safety net or protectiveness. She is completely untethered, and that is a dangerous place for a person to be in this situation. This is exactly where Jong-yong's sickness intensifies. Up until now, he's been a predator lurking in the office vents, targeting any women he can find. But now his obsession narrows entirely on Dahye. Not because he loves her, and not because he sees her as a human being. It's because he smells vulnerability and senses her weakness and isolation, and he wants to possess her. Not cure her or anything, but just own her because he can. Jong-yong is utterly disgusting on an individual level, but Kim makes sure to let you know that this is not a product of DNA. This is actually because of his environment. He inherited his toxic misogyny straight from his father, a violent loser who used to commit a lot of DV to the mother and probably to his son. And eventually he abandons the family and says it's the fault of the mother. Yet Jong-hyung's mother stays and looks after the family and of course takes care of him. But instead of learning from his father's mistake, Jong-hyung becomes him. He treats his own mother with absolute disgusting behavior, refusing to take her to the dentist when she is in pain, and literally shakes her so violently that you could hear her teeth rattle. The author gives us zero space to pity this villain. He swims in a toxic male culture that trivializes violence against women, objectifies them in everyday scenarios, and translate this into sheer entitlement into normal behavior. The novel doesn't isolate Jong-yong as a lone wolf. It places him firmly in our current reality, making him the ultimate terrifying representation of every single online incel and red pill podcaster lurking on the internet and in our lives today. As Dahye spirals through the fallout of the leak, the novel undergoes a massive shift. It steps out of pure realism and descends into a deeply haunting ghost story. Eun-hee, the sister that has passed, completely re-enters the narrative. Her ghost begins to creep through the edges of the pages. She isn't just floating in the background for the atmosphere of the story. She becomes a living, breathing manifesto of unresolved female suffering. Her pain was never redeemed in life, and now she wants vengeance, and Dahye decides she's going to be the one to get it for her. What makes this so brilliant is that it avoids a simple sort of cheesy girl power empowerment trope. This sisterly bond is messy and tangled. It's full of love, but also it's laced with deep jealousy from the past and guilt and unfinished anger. And by the time Dahye begins moving towards revenge, it doesn't feel like a sudden action movie plot twist. It feels like a high-pressured valve finally ready to explode. Because the author does show us how useless institutional justice is for women in this world. Dahye does go to the police and report the video leak when it first happened, but do you know what they did? Absolutely nothing. Not a single follow-up, not a single phone call to check up on her to see if she's okay. Desperate for the answer, Dahye, though, tries to contact Hudson on multiple occasions, and she soon realizes that he's ghosting her and actually blocking her from getting through to him. He never really left the country. He just retreated back into his family's massive wealth, protected by his high status name. In fact, he's already happily engaged to a wealthy heiress, proving that he's a serial cheater and a not great guy. And here is the massive reveal. Hudson is the direct fictional representation of those real-life disgusting K-pop villains from the Burning Sun scandal. He was the one who secretly filmed his intimate moments with Dahye. He's done it to countless other women, trading their bodies like it's trophies, mocking them and sharing them with his friends in a private group chat. And therefore, I think from that, it was accidentally or purposely probably linked by one of his disgusting friends. With the police doing absolutely nothing and the system actively protecting men, revenge becomes the only avenue now left on the table. Eventually, the novel turns fully towards vengeance, and let me tell you, it's not neat and it's not glamorous. This is not a story where your heroine suddenly becomes a cool, untouchable John Wick, while the audience gets to cheer from the safe distance. Dahye's violence is messy, intimate, and profoundly traumatic. She stalks Hudson, eavesdropping on a conversation between him and his fiancée. She hears him manipulate his future wife, confirms everything that she sort of is already starting to realize, that this man is a cheater and will never change and he's despicable. He's incapable of loving anyone but himself. But the second he spots Dahye, his predatory nature kicks right back in, and he immediately tries to get her alone and gets into intimate moments with her. So she plays along. She lures him back to the apartment, which at this point is a tiny rundown shack. It's infested with rodents and cockroaches, and he doesn't seem to care. He just wants to get some. It doesn't deter him from getting into the mood for it. So she obviously starts to seduce him. She continues to play along, she starts to seduce him and tells him to undress. Now, a massive trigger warning here, because it starts to get really, really graphic with the violence. Skip ahead if you need to the next time step if you don't want to hear about it, and then just get to the final reveal. Otherwise, here we go. Once Hudson is completely vulnerable, Dahye draws out a weapon and literally cuts off his eggplant. And Hudson is transformed into a sniveling, pathetic little weasel begging for his life. But she doesn't listen to it. She finishes the job and exits Hudson. In the background, her sister's ghost is looking on with absolute satisfaction. Shockingly, Dahye is not panicked. She's very calm, she's chilled and methodical in her cleaning up of the body and disposes of Hudson's body parts in many pieces across Seoul. Because, hey, no body, no crime is the methodology, right? Her only mistake, though, is that she decides to keep his eggplant in her fridge as a literal trophy, and that choice ultimately becomes her downfall. As a reader, you are desperate for Dahye to hopefully get away with it, run off into the sunset, and find peace with her best friend, Bora. But this is a horror novel, not a fairy tale. Enter back Jong-yong, the perverted IT stalker who has been surveillancing and following Dahye all this time and staking out her apartment. And he sees Hudson walk in at some point, but he never sees Hudson walk out. The second Dahye leaves to dispose of the evidence, Jong-yong breaks in and finds the trophy eggplant in her fridge. Dahye, though, walks back into the apartment and finds him there. She is quicker than him and injures him and is about to finish him off when there is a knock at the door. It's the police. Dahye forces Jong-yong to go to a bedroom and hide in the closet, and she ties him up and threatens him that if he makes any noise or tries to escape, she's going to finish him worse than she did to Hudson. And then she goes to answer the door. Now, do you think, the police is here? Maybe they're finally getting back on her violation crime of the video leak? No, it's got nothing to do with her at all. Of course not, because that's a woman's issue. This is about a man that is missing. Yes, because a wealthy man named Hudson, they said, is reported missing by his powerful parents. And they've tracked down Dahye because they found out that they were at one point dating. Upon hearing the police in the apartment, though, Jong-yong crawls out of the wardrobe and onto the floor, creating a loud thumping noise. The bedroom door suddenly opens because the police have insisted on looking around after hearing the sound. Obviously, the police seeing a man tied up on the floor, there is consequences to get, and a fight breaks out. And in the absolute chaos of the police raid, Dahye is tragically pew-pewed and is unalived by the officer. Instead of achieving the triumphant justice we crave in the fiction, the ending leans heavily into a devastating, hopeless reality. The system protects the predator. Jong-yong survives the encounter and is named a hero because he is the one that took down the person that unalived a wealthy man. And the media hails him the hero of the story rather than the disgusting, voyeuristic stalker, completely erasing his whole entire crimes. When the police finds the hidden footage of the women on his phone, they literally shrug it off and tell him it's fine since it's for your private use, no harm in it, and just lets him keep the footage and let him go on his way. But the author still gives us one more glorious twist. Because Dahye has a fiercely loyal best friend, Bora. She steps up to deliver the final act of vengeance. In a spectacular hit-and-run accident, Bora completely flattens Jong-yong in the middle of the street and ending his life right there on the asphalt. And as he's passing away, he looks over and he sees the ghost of Dahye and her sister standing right there watching him pass. So at the end of the dark, relentless, agonizing ride, we do get a little small drop of satisfaction. If a woman is denied privacy, denied belief, denied dignity, and denied protection by the state, what shape does her agency take when it finally returns? In Molka, the answer is terrifying and extreme and, of course, violent. But this is the only logical response that the author had to a broken world. Now let's move on to my final thoughts of the book. Stepping back from the plot, let's talk about why this book actually lingers with you after it's done. Initially, I felt that the characters were very one-dimensional. Even as Dahye evolves from a naive young woman seeking validation into someone driven by vengeance, her focus remains entirely on him, the man, which at times makes it harder to fully connect with her on a deeper level and actually root for her. But ultimately, I think that is the purpose of the author. This isn't a story that asks you to empathize with Dahye in a traditional way or even try to pity her or sympathize with her. Instead, it asks you to sit with her rage, to understand the raw forces that shape her, especially the objectification of women and the system that fails them and refuses to protect them. The author shows us how shame is weaponized in society. The men commit the crimes, but the woman is forced to carry the stain. Dahye's body is never allowed to simply belong to her. It constantly is interpreted and used by family, predators, elites, and even uneven goes. Trapped between the violence of the creepy man from below and then the wealthy protector status of Hudson from above, Kim proves that misogyny doesn't belong to just one social class. It simply mutates depending on what tool a man has available at his disposal. The supernatural layer deserves some massive credit here too. Her sister's Onghee's ghost elevates this from a trendy, rip from the headlines thriller into something mystic. It proves that violence against women accumulates across generation and silences. Is this book comforting? Absolutely not. This is where the author is telling you that women should refuse to be just polite and leave it as it is. It rejects the idea that a violated woman should respond in a way that keeps everybody else comfortable. Molka is rage sharpened into a narrative weapon. The moment a woman decides she would rather become terrifying than consumable. If that's what Kim's goals were, then I think that is right. The novel completely succeeds in it. Its message comes through so clear and powerful, which is why I ended up upgrading my initial rating from a 3 to a 4 out of 5 stars. And that, my friend, is the complete wrap up and recap of this book. If you have read Molka, please let me know what impacted you the most. Was it the creepy surveillancing, or maybe the sister storyline, or maybe the social shame or the wild revenge? And if you haven't picked it up and this recap has convinced you, let me know what is driving you to maybe read it. Maybe is it the horror, the analysis, or the sheer chaos of female rage done right? Drop all your thoughts and rants in the comments below. I love chatting with you guys, and I'll definitely try to reply to as many as I can. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when the next video will drop. Now, until next time, please, happy reading, stay safe, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.